What's going on, everyone? My name is Johnny Bandon, and I'm your CCNA instructor for this CCNA video series. In these upcoming videos, we're going to finally finish off our section 2 or our layer 2 section, and we're going to finish that off by going over CDP, LLDP, span tree protocol, and then Ether channel. So in these slides, we're going to go over a couple important protocols, especially for network discovery and neighbor discovery at the layer 2. So for your switched environments and for your routers and layer 3 devices can also use these as well. And even some of your endpoints will use some of these protocols. So these protocols are the Cisco Discovery Protocol and the Link Layer Discovery Protocol. Two very similar protocols that accomplish the same exact thing, one being Cisco proprietary and one being vendor neutral, meaning any vendor can use LLDP. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into it. All right. So CDP. So this stands for the Cisco Discovery Protocol. And what this is a layer 2 protocol, control plane protocol, that is used to send informational data only between Cisco devices. So let me, put some little emphasis on that. Just between Cisco devices. So this includes Cisco firewalls, routers, switches, phones, even Cisco server chassis. All Cisco devices come with CDP enabled, or at least the functionality of CDP to be enabled, okay? So in the Cisco Discovery Protocol, there's a lot of things we're going to learn, right? And it is a control plane protocol, which means that essentially that this is going to be done in the CPU of our switches and our hardware, and it's going to be used to kind of discover, right, and do control. So the Cisco Discovery Protocol is used in Cisco networks to also send other control plane data like VTP, DTP, and PAGP. So you'll actually see when you break down that CDP packet that in that CDP payload, or in that header, you're going to see that VTP and DTP information as well. Another key thing about CDP is that it is used to propagate the voice VLAN information for a Cisco IP phone. So you know that Cisco IP phones have a trunking functionality built into them where they have two Ethernet ports on the back, right? One going to the switch, one going to the computer, and its traffic's going to be tagged, and then traffic sitting behind it will be untagged until it reaches the switch. So it kind of almost forms like a trunk if you really think about it, because it allows untagged and tagged traffic across that phone's link. And we use CDP to discover those Cisco IP phones to enable that capability. And then the Cisco Discovery Protocol itself is going to be carried across by the default or native VLAN, essentially meaning in that Ethernet frame, when we do our encapsulation, CDP uses VLAN 1, okay? Or our native or default VLAN. And then you see here the CDP frame. So we have our Ethernet section here, right? Destination address, source address. And then we have the actual CDP information right here in that header. And then we have the CDP PDU information. And you have this list of TLVs. We're going to get into this. What that TLV is all the information we're actually sending, right? So if you look into this type field under the TLVs, you're going to see all the information that we're sending to our neighbors here, our port ID, the VTP domain. We have QoS here, right? Voice VLAN, okay. Our management address, and many, many more. So that's all the information we're sending. It's going to be in this variable length list, which is a list of what we call time length variables. And then in this type field is going to be all that information, right? And we're going to break this down in Wireshark as well. So some more overview. So you see the destination here is the CDP, right? But you see all that other information that I was telling you, all that control plane information that's part of that CDP packet. And then if you break it down, you see everything getting sent across there. So pretty cool. And we're actually going to show you how to filter some of these TLVs. So maybe you don't want your management address coming across. We're also going to show you how to turn off and on CDP per interface. Because maybe you don't want this information to be used by a malicious threat actor out there connecting up, you know, a Cisco device and trying to capture that CDP information to learn vulnerabilities of that switch or device it's connecting to. Okay, now jumping into LLDP, the link layer discovery protocol. You're going to notice a lot of similarities, and that's because, well, it essentially does the same thing and also uses TLVs to send across information, right? So we have our mandatory TLVs, and LLDP has optional ones that we can configure or add, right? And then LLDP can be configured in transmit only or receive only or both. So this is going to be at the interface level, right? So at the interface level, we can say we just want to transmit LLDP messages, we don't want to receive, okay? And then another difference here is LLDP has an optional time length value that can be configured to send additional information to network devices. So we have a little bit more control out of the box with LLDP on what we want to send. Okay, and then we have the MED. So the LLDP MED is an enhancement to LLDP that is used to connect to network endpoints like IP phones, conference bridges, anything that isn't just a regular old network device. So essentially what that means is when LLDP came out, it was just meant for network devices, whereas CDP was meant for all Cisco devices. So LLDP, to kind of not necessarily compete, but just to keep up with technology, added the MED to just give you a little bit more options when connecting to other devices that aren't just network devices like a switch or a router. And then you see here some of the common optional TLVs here, right? Network policy, power management, inventory management, location. And then you see how we can configure these TLVs right here at global config to say, hey, we do want to send the management address. We do want to send the power management information or the port description. And if we don't want to send this information, we want to filter it, it's real easy. We just put a no in front of these commands, and LLDP won't put those optional TLVs on. CDP has the same function where we can filter, but we apply it a little different. CDP, we create sort of an access list or a CDP filter list, and then apply that filter list on a per interface basis. Whereas this is globally, okay? So CDP configuration, pretty simple. If it's not already on by default on your Cisco device, globally, you enable or disable this command here, CDP run. And then if you want to enable it per interface or disable it per interface, the command is CDP enable. And then of course, to disable it, you just put a no in front of these commands. And then we also have the hello and hold timers of CDP. You can change those values globally. So this is going to be the hold timer, the send intervals, whatever you want to call it. Hello, hold timers, dead timers. You can change it with this command right here globally. CDP hold time, and then CDP timer is going to be your send intervals. So for the exam, right, if they ask you how do you change it, it's going to be from global configuration. And the command for the hello timer is CDP timer or the send intervals. And then for the hold time is going to be CDP hold time, and then in seconds. And then configuration continued. So we can also create a list of TLVs from global configuration that can then be used later under the interface to either filter TLVs incoming or to make sure that we add those TLVs, right? Or excuse me, just to filter those TLVs. We don't have those optional ones like LLDP. So we can create the TLV list here with this command, CDP TLV list, and then the name. And then we have all the TLVs that we want to filter. And then you see here, we're going to go to this interface. And unlike an access list, we don't have to put inbound or like outbound. We just put CDP filter TLV list and then the name. And then it's going to go ahead and apply that. We can see that with this syslog message here. Okay, and then LLDP for the global command is going to be the exact same. It's going to be LLDP run. Made it very simple for you. Thank you, Cisco. But when we get to the interface level, it's going to change just a little bit. Instead of one command to turn it on or off, you decide whether to turn on the receiver transmit or turn off the receive and transmit with the no command. And then for the timers, it's going to be the same commands again. It's going to be LLDP hold time for the hold timers or the dead interval. And then LLDP timer for the hello timer or the send intervals. And again, this is going to be configured globally. Okay, then verification. So we have two verification commands we're going to go over, and these are really the only ones you need to know, in my opinion. There's other commands like show CDP entry, but CDP, if you're not using network management software to map out your network and to kind of automate things, at least the network diagrams, if you're going in blind to a network and you got to figure out what's connected to you, show CDP neighbor, show LLDP neighbor is your best friend. In a multi-vendor environment, show LLDP neighbor will show you all the network devices connected to you and maybe some endpoints. Show CDP neighbors in a Cisco environment is going to show you all your Cisco network devices and then some IP phones or VTC phones or conference bridges, as some people call them. So the first simple command is just going to be show CDP neighbors. And the key takeaway here is just showing which interfaces, right? And then the device ID that's connected to you. Just a simple output. This is kind of used just to quickly see, like, okay, I got 3 switches connected to me. Now, let's say it's time to SSH into your connected device and you want to figure out the IP address. Now we can do this command, show CDP neighbors, specify the interface, and then detail. And this is going to give you all those TLVs getting sent across, including the management IP address, which then we can use, that's -L, to SSH and start kind of mapping out the network, right? Going through our switches via SSH or maybe Telnet if you don't like security. And we can find out our neighbors' IP addresses that we're going to use to remote into them using that CDP neighbors detail command. And this might come as a surprise, but boom, LLDP is the exact same thing. So these commands do the exact same thing, so we're not going to hit on them too hard. And great, that's going to be it for the CDP and LLDP lecture portion. Kind of simple. I mean, there's really not too much with these protocols. I mean, they're neighbor discovery protocols, and that's it, right? You can get pretty complex when you start filtering and deciding based on your security protocols and standards and guidelines, do we enable these neighbor discovery? And really that's going to be up to your organization or maybe you, depending what position you're in. Maybe you're that CISO one day, right? Definitely not after CCNA exam, maybe sometime in industry. But these commands really help you navigate your network when you're just working from a CLI, okay? Now, just for some real-world advice, if you're working on a campus network, this shouldn't be the way that you go throughout the network. Your secure CRT should already have your sessions established for the network you're working on. And you should have some sort of network management software that you're using. SolarWinds is like a big one. One we use in my enterprise, Forward Networks. There is software out there to make your life easier so you don't have to rely on just a show CDP neighbors command starting at the router, going through core distro all the way down to an access switch just to troubleshoot that switch, right? So with that being said, I want to thank you guys for viewing and stay tuned for our CDP lab.